welcome my dear friend and my law partner, your next District Attorney of Bexar County, Meredith Chacon.
When I was thinking about what I was going to say and how I was going to express to you why I'm running for District Attorney and why I am the District Attorney that Bexar County needs, I started thinking about what I believe in. And what came to me was when I was in high school, there was a preacher at our church, and every year he would give a sermon, and the title of that sermon was, "This is what I believe." And he would pick a topic that was really hard, really controversial, and he would preach on it. And it was always moving to me. It's always stuck in my mind. So when I was writing this speech, that is what I was thinking. I want to express to you, this is what I believe the District Attorney's Office should do, what it is for, and what I intend to do for you as my community, as the citizens of Bexar County. Bexar County needs a DA that will be tough on crime, and I am that DA. Tough on crime is someone who will make sure violent criminals are taken out of our communities. Tough on crime is someone who will protect the vulnerable. And tough on crime is someone who will fight for justice to see that it is done. And that's important to us as Texans, because in Texas, prosecutors' primary duty is not to seek justice, not to wander out in the woods and look for it in the fog, but to see that justice is done. If you want a DA who will fight to keep our community safe and work to uphold the oath of office, I am that District Attorney. I will see that justice is done for you and for all of our county. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Uncensored Voice. This is Randolph Pasillas, your host. Today's guest is Bexar County District Attorney Republican primary candidate Meredith Chacon. Welcome to the show, Meredith.
Thanks for having me.
So give us a brief bio about what brought you to San Antonio. Why do you call San Antonio home, and how did it come to be?
Okay. Well, you know, my dad was in the Air Force for 25 years and he retired here, and so his last station was here in San Antonio, and I graduated from high school in San Antonio, and we've never left. We are native Texans, but now San Antonio has been our home for more than half my life. So.
Thank you for that. So you have worked in the Bexar County District Attorney's Office from, according to your website, May of 1999 to September of 2018, yet you resigned short of retirement. My question is, why did you leave the employ of the DA's office at that particular time?
Well, at that particular time, if you'll remember, in 2018, the current DA had won the Democratic primary, and he had indicated that he was going to have certain policies that decline prosecution of offenses that don't align with his political philosophy, such as low levels of drugs, criminal trespass, and other things that are promoted by George Soros. I felt like as an assistant prosecutor, you take an oath, and that oath is very important, and that you are supposed to enforce and defend the laws, and so I could not do that in good conscience working for someone that was going to tell me not to enforce the laws, and so I left.
And what would you say is the defining factor that makes you stand out amongst those seeking this high office in Bexar County?
I think in Bexar County right now you have three candidates. You have myself, my primary candidate, and the current incumbent, and of those three, I'm the only one with the kind of experience that I've had. I'm the only person with over 15 years experience on the front lines fighting for the victims of Bexar County, and I'm the only one with the experience building teams with law enforcement and other collaborations that I have done and I've completed successfully. And so I would say that puts me just a head and shoulders above any of the candidates in this race.
And what would you say, what did you specialize during your tenure at the DA's office? What really made you stand out? What did you specialize in?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because when you start out at the DA's office, everybody pretty much starts as what we call a baby prosecutor. You know, you're doing misdemeanor cases, DWIs, and those were very important. It's a good training ground. So I've tried those cases. I've tried misdemeanor assaults and just the regular cases. In fact, my first felony case was a drug case that I got a life sentence on. So I've tried drug cases, I've tried cases against members of certain gangs, gang prosecutions. But towards the end, you kind of get into a specialized unit, if you will, and I was a child abuse, domestic violence, and human trafficking prosecutor. I tried some very high-profile human trafficking cases and child abuse cases here in Bexar County, and it allowed me to build again on that skill of collaborating with and investigating with law enforcement.
You referred multiple times to declination. Now, in the current administration, can you explain what that means to the Bexar County voter and how it affects them?
Sure. I think it's very important that people understand this, because it's something that the current DA talks about and is proud of, and that I'm not sure the community at large understands. Declination is a policy whereby the DA's office does not accept a charge from law enforcement. And they have categorized various levels of offense or various laws that they are refusing to prosecute. One of those is criminal trespass. Another is low levels of drugs. And we're not just talking about marijuana, we're talking about heroin, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and cocaine. They don't prosecute low levels of that amount of drugs. There's also certain theft offenses, burglary of a vehicle. I believe graffiti was on the list. It may not be right now. It kind of moves a moving target. But what that means is that if police arrest the person and take them downtown, the DA's office rejects the case and the person walks out the door. And this should be important, because if we are not enforcing low-level offenses, if we're not engaging people when they make that choice, and we're not putting bond conditions or other kind of things to help funnel them to, if they have a drug problem, if they have an issue with homelessness, we're ignoring a problem that's only getting worse and worse and worse. And I would say to you, Bexar County, that you feel this, because we have the highest violent crime rate we've had since 1994, and that's been on this DA's watch, and that's a direct result of these Soros-funded policies.
Now, in reference to Proposition A, you recognize that we've voted on Proposition A and B. One of them was defunding the police. The other one was, in a summary, basically giving the city a blank check for maybe the voters vote on something to be spent on, and then the city at their discretion will use it to spend in other ways. In this case, very shortly after that vote, Proposition A was voted in, the city had purchased a hotel, overpriced, I might add, and that is a source of crime, that Bexar County citizens should be concerned about. What are your thoughts on that hotel, and drugs go through there, in and out there? I mean, are there laws governing that? I mean, are the police involved?
Well, so
are
that
the cases
hotel,
being heard?
Well, it's actually right down the street from my law office, and what should be alarming to people is where it's located. Is if you're on hotels.com, for example, or one of these sites, and you're a tourist coming here, you might book a hotel right next to it. My understanding of it is that it does provide shelter for the unsheltered, but that that use is allowed of drugs, but not commerce, is how they're terming it. And what they mean is you can use drugs there if you so choose, but you aren't supposed to sell drugs there. And I just ask you to think about if that sounds reasonable. I mean, it's attracting a certain element. Now, what I have learned from community partners is there are concerns that there are no place for some of these people to go because of criminal histories and things like that. They may not qualify for Haven for Hope. I'm just not sure that having a hotel where you can just openly and notoriously ignore the law is the answer to that problem.
It seems that was an unwise use of money. That's something that the Bexar County city taxpayers would not have approved of, and that is a result of the city council that we have. But the voters voted it in, and that's just the way it is. But thank goodness our defunding the police did not go through. We actually were able to prevent that by a 0.16% margin. And we think that if enough people would not have voted against it, it would have been also enforced. And so thank goodness our police are continuing to be funded. Now, switching gears, in 2015, you were appointed as liaison between law enforcement and child protective services. What was your mission in that position that you held, and is it currently making a difference in your absence?
Well, so there was a point in time where we realized that, and I had been promoting that the child protection cases that the district attorney's office prosecutes, they prosecute the termination cases. That many of those cases had the same set of facts, same witnesses, same people involved as the criminal cases that were their companion case. So, for example, if someone had physically abused a child, the children might be removed by CPS, and the DA's office is handling that case. And at the same time, the DA's office might be prosecuting the person that committed the physical abuse. And there had long been a lack of communication between the two. So a position was created for me to be able to both supervise the child protection unit over the CPS cases and make sure that the criminal companion cases, that there was communication and a cooperative effort there. As far as I know, that position no longer exists. And I have noticed in my own practice, because I represent children who've been removed and I represent them on the children's court docket or the child welfare docket, there is a huge gap in communication yet again. And so I want to promote a culture of communication within the office where prosecutors in different areas are speaking to one another and we're having some consistency.
And who has the authority to take that position away? Is it the DA, the current DA that might have done that? The DA has the power to create and and take away these types of positions so that one no longer exists, as you said?
Oh, yes, yes. So when the DA gets to structure their office however they like, the number of positions may or may not change depending upon if they ask for additional budgetary means to have new positions. But you have people at a certain rank, you can move them around and title them how you want to. You can develop your own version of whatever divisions you want within the office. So what I've seen under this current administration, for example, he did away with that position and maybe absorbed it into some other area. They did away with the vehicular crimes unit, which is important because that was also the DWI task force that grew out of that. So they're trying specialized cases involving intoxication assault, intoxication manslaughter, hit and runs. That unit doesn't exist anymore. That's just been absorbed into the regular units. Elder fraud, that was done away with, and I believe he went back and asked for more money to recreate that, but it was done away with. Don't forget that. There was an Internet Crimes Against Children unit that was created under Judge Reed. I don't believe there's still someone dedicated to that unit. So there are a lot of things that have been lost. I have the institutional knowledge to know what worked, what didn't work, and to be able to bring a correct structure back to that office.
So, in certain areas of town, especially on the northwest part of town, near Ingram Road, 410 heading south, there's a lot of racing that occurs in that area nearly nightly, almost at a certain time. And during that time, I think it was during your campaign launch or shortly afterwards, 6 people had died as a result of street racing. Do you have any knowledge that maybe these cases are not being tried?
That's my understanding. I know that there was, and I want to say it was last summer, Randolph, I'd have to go look, but I believe there was a big bust of some street racers in that area that you're talking about. And what I heard from my law enforcement friends was that those people were released and many of those cases were rejected. And I can tell you that under previous administrations I worked for, we were very hard on racing because racing is a very dangerous crime. And so to deter the idea of racing, there was a very much a hard line drawn at the office about street racing because we had a huge problem of it, if you'll remember, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And we were able to lower the amount of racing cases that were happening in our county because we were tough on racing cases. Since now they're not seeking harsh punishments, they're not taking those cases as seriously, they're apparently letting people go, we've seen an increase in racing, and I would agree with you, it's very dangerous. There have been deaths out near where I live, over on that part. I mean, just all over the county, it's becoming a huge problem again.
It's one thing to race and break the law that way, but it's another thing to race and have a loss of human life. And if those cases are being declined to be prosecuted in any way, shape, or form, I'm sure the Bexar County voter would want some answers from who is in charge. In this case, the DA makes those decisions to prosecute the cases, I presume at their discretion within the authority, within the law. My next question then is, what is your message to Texas peace officers that put their lives on the line to protect the citizens of Bexar County?
I think the first thing I'd say to them is thank you. I know myself that in my practice as a prosecutor, there were times that there were threats made against me, and it was my investigators that, by the way, the DA investigators are law enforcement, who surrounded me and protected me and made me feel safe. I also appreciate the fact that when there have been incidents, we call the police, they come out, they're there to protect us. I also recognize how dangerous certain calls are for law enforcement. Domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls they can go on. And I also realize that if they're proactively policing and out there looking to make sure that we're safe and watching what's going on in neighborhoods, there are going to be interactions with other people, and there might even be officer-involved incidents. And so I want law enforcement to know, and I think one of the reasons that the San Antonio Police Officers Association has endorsed me fully in this race is that I am committed to quickly reviewing those cases to get good officers back on the street. Right now, what we have is it's being used as a political agenda, and they're sitting at a desk for up to 2 years waiting for a determination as to whether or not a shooting was a good shooting or an incident was a good incident or whether or not they did something they weren't supposed to do. I have a proven track record of prosecuting those who get out of line, and I will do that. But I want law enforcement and all the citizens to know we're going to review these things as quickly and as thoroughly as possible because we need good officers back on the street protecting us.
Yes, and another shout out to all of our Texas peace officers that serve in Bexar County, San Antonio Police, and all the other police departments, which there are many, making you safe, me safe, and everybody safe, and they do it without prejudice. And as DA, will you prosecute any and all crimes that fall under your discretionary purview, as authorized by the Constitution of the great state of Texas and the United States?
Yes. So I think what people need to understand is that a prosecutor has discretion to determine what to prosecute, but that should be exercised on a case-by-case basis, not on a political offense-by-offense basis. So if it is against the law in Bexar County, I am going to enforce it. And by that I mean if law enforcement brings me a case where they meet the elements of the crime and it is appropriate for a charge to go forward, then we're going to prosecute it. And prosecuting it might be offering the person some sort of probation with conditions if necessary. It also might mean prison, but we're not going to just reject it outright because we don't agree with the political sense.
So sometimes it appears that the citizens of Bexar County have recognized that sometimes in the DA position there are political motivations that affect their decisions and how they enforce the law. And some Bexar County citizens thinks that is unacceptable. Follow the letter of the law, use your discretion as allowed by law, and give these people justice, whether it be they go to jail or whether it be they set free, or even probationary type sentences, but it must be addressed in its entirety, hopefully. You have secured multiple life sentences and multiple over 25-year sentences. I think what Bexar County citizens are hoping for is that under your leadership, keeping them safe is paramount in this position of trust. How will you do that?
Well, I think it's important to note that the types of cases that I was getting those high sentences were violent crimes, crimes against children, crimes against vulnerable people, elderly, women, people who are in a lesser position of power physically than their attacker. So these are not. I'm not someone who's just going to lay the hammer down on every single case. You have to have been doing this job long enough to know when we are absolutely going to do that and when we are going to work with people. So I want Bexar County to know you will be safe with me because I have the experience to know that. I also will tell you this. As a prosecutor, what I learned very early on is you will never appropriately plea bargain a case if you're bargaining against yourself. What I mean by that is if you're going down on your offer every time, or you're letting the defense know that you're afraid to go to trial, you're not going to be able to get a righteous plea on that case. And I routinely got pleas of 35, 40 years, even life, because they didn't want to have a trial. They knew that I was going to take it to trial and I was going to aggressively try that case. And so I think that's one of the things is I want to make sure we have an elite team of trial lawyers who are ready for trial and not giving these cases away when someone has been hurt. So you will be safe with me.
What is, in your opinion, the most taxing, most passionate issue right now as far as what the DA's office lacks right now, the top thing that you're concerned about right now?
Well, obviously the enforcement of the laws is really important to me, but I think as a former victims advocate, what I would say is I'm very disturbed by what I continue to see in the media where victims are upset about either a case being dismissed or a plea bargain that has been made. What the citizens of Bexar County need to understand is this. You may not always like the decision that I have to make when I have this job, but you are going to know why I made it. Victims are owed an explanation. It's in the Texas Victims' Rights law, in the Code of Criminal Procedure. They are obligated to explain, to sit down with the victims and to tell them what the plea bargain is. That doesn't mean they get to dictate the deal, but they have to at least have that moment. And from what I'm reading, these people have no idea how these decisions are being made, and they're not communicating with them. And I know this for certain because I right now represent a young woman who was a victim of sexual assault. They dismissed the case and they would not talk to her. They did not talk to her. And I, as her attorney and guardian ad litem, have asked and they have not spoken to me.
Wow. So my next question is, what can you offer to the law-abiding Bexar County citizen that your primary opponent cannot?
Experience would be number one. I mean, if you want someone who needs on-the-job training, okay, or if you don't, is kind of what the question comes down to. I'm ready to go. I've been ready to run this office for years. I've actually run units at this office. I've trained prosecutors. People may not know this. I've trained prosecutors all over the state through our association, the Texas District and County Attorneys Association. I'm recognized as someone who's capable of teaching others how to do this job. So do you want someone who's never prosecuted a case, or do you want someone who's so good at prosecuting a case that they train other prosecutors in how to do their job? That would be a huge difference between me and my opponent.
So the Bexar County citizens naturally want to, you would have a qualification of having a person that would possess the managerial skills that go along with not just prosecuting, but managing the office itself. And you've explained that you are qualified in that regard. So I thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. My final question is, what is your message then to the Democrat and the independent voters of Bexar County, because you are running as a Republican? What is your message to them that are undecided at this time? Why should they vote for you?
I think that public safety is something that really has no party. We all want to feel safe in our home. We all want our children to be safe when they go outside and play. We want to know that we're growing up in a place where they're not going to see people using drugs out on the playground. They're not going to see homeless people on the street having sex, right there in front of them, like has happened at some churches I've talked to. So you want to know that someone's going to enforce the law. And know this, I'm a prosecutor first. I've never been a politician. I got into this because I was called into this, because I felt like someone needed to step up who knows the job and can protect the citizens of Bexar County and who is passionate about that. So regardless of what party you are or how you feel, look into what I stand for, look into my history, and understand that I want to work for every citizen of Bexar County, Republican, Democrat, Independent, undecided, whoever you are. If you're hurt in Bexar County, I'm going to fight just as hard for you as I do for anybody else. So I would respectfully ask for their vote that way.
Now, I just want to remind our viewers that early voting started yesterday on February 14th. Today is the 15th, so 14th to 25th of February is early voting for primary to define our Republican Bexar County District Attorney candidate. And of course, primary election day is on March 1st. So we encourage everybody who's watching, please vote. If the worst thing you can do is not vote and be apathetic about it, so help us define our Republican candidate and get your voice heard. Thank you very much for your time, Meredith. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Texas.
Thank you.